TransPennine is a train operating company providing regional and intercity rail services between the major cities and towns of northern England and Scotland. The franchise operates almost all of its services to and through Manchester, covering three main routes: the North, the South, and the Anglo-Scottish. The service provides rail links for major towns and cities such as Edinburgh, Glasgow, Liverpool, Sheffield, Hull, Leeds, York, Scarborough, Cleethorpes, Middlesbrough, and Newcastle upon Tyne. One of the main routes is from Manchester Airport to Glasgow Central, covering a total of 235 miles in just under 3 hours and 45 minutes. On average, seeing up to 8 trains a day. To mention another core route, there is the Liverpool Lime Street to Newcastle service, which covers 187 miles in total in just under 3 hours, seeing up to 17 trains a day. TransPennine calls at 84 stations in total, of which 81 are step free to some degree. They only manage 19 stations in total, most of which are located on the east coast of the country. Anyway, they run numerous key services and will start on the southern route with Liverpool. From Liverpool Lime Street, there's a train every hour heading towards Cleethorpes, stopping at key stations including Warrington Central, Manchester's Oxford Road and Piccadilly, as well as Sheffield and Doncaster. Some late trains also terminate a little bit earlier at Doncaster or Sheffield. There is also a single train at 23:19 in the evening, heading from Liverpool Lime Street to Manchester Airport, as well as an early 5:34 service from Manchester Airport to Cleethorpes. And now that's the entirety of the southern route done, let's look at the northern portion. Heading again from Liverpool Lime Street, we have an hourly service heading towards Hull, passing through Manchester Victoria, Huddersfield and Leeds to name a few. There are some early and late trains which call at some other stations including South Milford and Garforth, and there is also another service every hour from Liverpool to Newcastle via Manchester Victoria, Huddersfield and Leeds. Heading down towards the airport, we have an hourly service to Saltburn, a seaside town in North Yorkshire, via all Manchester stations as well as Leeds and York. And from Manchester to Piccadilly, we also have a train every 2 hours heading to Scarborough, another famous seaside town in Yorkshire, calling at Huddersfield, Leeds and York. And speaking of York, there's also a train every 2 hours from here to Scarborough. TransPennine also operate a 3:59 morning service from Manchester Airport to Scarborough, in case you ever need to make that journey at that time. And we also have a service every 2 hours from Manchester Piccadilly to Newcastle, some of which terminate a little bit earlier at Leeds. Finally, from the northern city, we have a stopping service generally every half hour from Manchester Piccadilly towards Huddersfield. And speaking of Huddersfield, I never realised how busy a station it actually was until I saw this map. We also have an hourly stopping service from here to Leeds. Now let's head up to the north. Yes, I'm talking about Scotland. From here, we have 7 trains a day heading down the east coast via Dunbar and Berwick, where 2 terminate. And from here, a further 5 continue towards Newcastle. There is also a really rogue late night service which heads all the way to Liverpool Lime Street from Edinburgh. Heading to the west coast from Edinburgh Waverley, we have a once every 2 hour service heading to Manchester Airport, stopping at Lockerbie, Preston and Manchester Piccadilly. There is also a very similar service, but it heads to Scotland's other major city, Glasgow. And to finish the TransPennine routes off, there are 2 services a day from Glasgow Central to Liverpool Lime Street via Preston and Wigan North Western. An anytime single between Glasgow Central and Manchester Airport will set you back £19.20, with an anytime return costing almost double that at £164.20. It's almost always cheaper to get a split ticket or use Avanti West Coast services. The main train maintenance centres and depots for TransPennine are located at Ardwick, which is near Manchester, as well as a smaller depot in York. There is also one just outside Glasgow, as well as a few smaller sidings at Newcastle, Scarborough, Hull, Cleethorpes, Sheffield, Preston and Liverpool Lime Street. The TransPennine Express brand was launched in the early 1990s by British Rail's Regional Railways sector, and it operated predominantly intercity journeys. By 1997, most of the British rail network ended up being privatised, with the current TransPennine routes being split between 2 major operators. Arriva Trains Northern, who run the North East Yorkshire region, and also a video I made here, as well as the first North Western routes, who predominantly ran in the northwest of England and North Wales region. Arriva kept the TransPennine branding, and in 2000 the Strategic Rail Authority announced that it planned to reorganise the two above franchises into what we know today as Northern and the TransPennine franchise. 3 years later, in 2003, the TransPennine Express franchise was awarded to a joint venture between First Group and Keolis. A year following that, some services from the previous franchise, so Arriva Trails Northern and First Great Western, were also transferred to TransPennine Express franchise. As always, franchises had to be renewed, but First Group have won the next bid and continued to run the TransPennine Express from April 2016 to March 2023, which has now been extended to May 2023, so only a month or so left. TransPennine ran 96 trains across all their routes, including 51 Class 185s, which predominantly run the northern and southern routes, a variety of Hitachi AT300s, which are what we've seen previously on a lot of other operators. There's also some Nova 2 trains, which are produced by the CAF Civity services, which form the Anglo-Scottish routes, and then Nova 3 services, which are pulled by a diesel locomotive with some carriages and some driving trailers, and these predominantly run on the Scarborough and Redcar Central routes. Now you might be wondering what Nova means. Well, it actually originates from Project Nova, which was launched by TransPennine Express to deal with overcrowding on trains. A little ironic now? Probably, but regardless, this has now been completed. And there is also the TransPennine Route Upgrade, which is a multi-billion-pound project transforming rail travel across the Pennines. The 76-mile line between Manchester, Huddersfield, Leeds and York will be fully electrified for both passenger and freight trains, and this also includes some rail remodelling, but they're expected to be completing in 2036 to 2041, so we still got over 10 years left. Stick your comments below and we'll see you next time.